The sun sets over the great Xuan nation, casting gold upon the capital. Fine wine pours freely, signaling a night of opulence and celebration. The Grand Tutor sits upon his throne, surrounded by beauty and luxury. Countless subordinates bow before him, chanting praises for his 50th birthday. He remembers his humble beginnings as a struggling scholar carrying heavy loads. Now he holds absolute power, his life a testament to ultimate success. Dancers twirl and guests revel, unaware that their world is about to end. Suddenly the ceiling glows as a streak of fire descends from the heavens. The guests cheer, proving that ignorance really is bliss until you explode. But the light crashes onto the roof, revealing a dark, ominous figure. Above the manor, the sky swirls with terrifying, otherworldly energy. Two godlike beings float in the void, locked in a deadly duel. While the Grand Tutor stares in shock, his guests blindly worship the spectacle. Li Fan's face twists in horror, realizing this is no blessing at all. High above, a swordsman corners a rugged fire cultivator in a desperate standoff. The swordsman demands a secret technique, threatening to end his former brother's life. He summons chaotic energy, preparing to strike down his old friend. Greed for immortality has turned a century of brotherhood into bitter hatred. Knowing he is outmatched, the fire cultivator unleashes a desperate, scorching aura. A colossal blade of energy manifests, dwarfing the city below with its power. With a cold glare, the swordsman drives the massive blade downward. Fire meets steel in the sky, creating a shockwave that shatters the atmosphere. The collision erupts into a blinding white light, consuming everything in its path. The shockwave slams into the manor, obliterating the celebration in an instant. Li Fan and his guests can only watch as their doom arrives. The Grand Tutor braces himself as the world around him turns to dust. He awakens in the rubble, coughing amidst the ruins of his former glory. Beside him lie the lifeless bodies of his wife and children. The once great manor is now a graveyard, filled with silence and smoke. The entire capital has been reduced to a burning hellscape of debris. Lying amidst the ashes of his life, Li Fan breaks into a manic, disbelief-fueled laughter. He recalls how he once scoured the endless seas, desperate to find a trace of the supernatural. From frozen tundras to deep abysses, his search for immortals had always turned up empty. He had resigned himself to a mundane fate, believing magic was nothing but a myth. But the destruction before him is proof that the gods are real, and they are terrifying. Amidst the despair, a dormant power awakens within him, identifying itself as the Huanzhen. The fabric of reality begins to warp, converting the physical world into a malleable illusion. Li Fan reveals the nature of his true cheat, the ability to turn lived reality into a simulation. He can reset his existence, returning to the exact moment he first arrived in this world. In his very first life, he was a nobody who failed his exams and sold trinkets for a living. He lived a quiet, wealthy life with a loving family, completely unaware of his potential. It wasn't until his deathbed that the system finally decided to show up, better late than never. That late-game power-up allowed him to dominate his second life and become the Grand Tutor. Back in the present, he refuses to reset immediately, ordering his troops to secure the ruins. He uses the cleanup efforts as a cover to hunt for clues about the two cultivators. Months pass and the city begins to heal, unaware that their leader is planning a hard reset. His spies report total failure in finding the culprits, leaving him with only one option. Li Fan steps into the formation, accepting that this timeline is a wash. He prepares to shed his old age and accumulated power to start from scratch. The world shatters into digital fragments as he initiates the regression process. He memorizes the names of his enemies, vowing to be ready for them in 50 years. Stripped of his physical form, his soul dives back into the vortex of time. He wakes up young again, immediately getting waterboarded by a superstitious ant. By year 2, he's already speedrunning the civil service exams with his future knowledge. In year 3, he introduces gunpowder to a sword fight just to be safe. He climbs the political ladder effortlessly, securing alliances and a strategic marriage. Years pass in a blur of family expansion and calculated gift-giving to royals. When the throne changes hands, Li Fan is already positioned as the new emperor's right hand. He intervenes in a royal scandal, saving the empress from a false accusation of witchcraft. Naturally, his private investigations with the empress become a bit more intimate than protocol allows. Li Fan takes a moment to cherish the memory of the family he once lost. The simulation dissolves, blurring the line between his lived reality and the system's interface. The system offers him a settlement reward, allowing him to carry over one aspect of his past life. He dismisses the first two options immediately, as retaining mortal possessions or strength is useless. Inheriting memories is too risky, as it could destabilize the timeline he intends to manipulate. He explains that the system's charge acts as a shield, automatically consuming energy to prevent his death. Prioritizing survival above all else, he chooses to speed up the charging progress for the next run. His stats reveal a terrifying truth. His mental age is over 1,000 years, far exceeding his physical form. The erosion of time weighs heavily on his soul, threatening to crush his mind under the burden of memories. He realizes that only by stepping onto the path of cultivation can he expand his mind enough to survive. His resolve hardens as he focuses on the only goal that matters, stealing the secrets of the two gods. He recalls that the invaders came from the ruinous abyss in the east, making it his primary target. He reflects on his past lives, where waking up in luxury only left him feeling hollow and confused. After centuries of repeating the same cycle, power and pleasure have become as tasteless as chewing wax. It was the arrival of those apocalyptic cultivators that finally gave his endless existence a new purpose. He vows to meet Dao Xuanzi and Ku Hong in 50 years, not as a victim, but as a rival. Restarting the timeline, he crushes the imperial exams, achieving a triple first with board efficiency. Instead of a high-ranking capital job, he requests a transfer to a remote county to further his plans. He infiltrates a noble house, securing an alliance that is both political and deeply personal. When the emperor falls ill, Li Fan marches back to the capital to ensure the succession goes his way. He installs his own bloodline on the throne, ruling from the shadows as the Grand Tutor once again. Decades later, he stands on a rooftop receiving critical reports about the mysterious abyss. His spy confirms that the deadly fog guarding the chasm lifts only once every 15 years. They describe a breathtaking, inverted world hidden deep within the darkness, visible only through telescopes. It is a land of towering cities and mystical energy, completely unlike the mortal realm above. Legendary beasts soar through the skies, confirming that a true cultivation world exists just out of reach. Li Fan asks the million-dollar question, has anyone managed to descend without dying? The report is grim, confirming that the astral winds turn anyone who enters into instant confetti. With no way down, Li Fan realizes he has hit a dead end and must wait for the timeline to catch up. He settles in to wait for year 50, ready to face the apocalypse one more time. The sky splits open as the two rival gods resume their catastrophic duel above the capital. Ku Hong roars in frustration, unaware that this time the battlefield has been rigged against him. From the streets below, a barrage of flaming projectiles shoots upward to greet the descending deities. The fire cultivator blocks the assault with ease, confused by these strange, tiny metal pellets. Dao Xuanzi watches from his flying sword, his arrogance blinding him to the trap springing beneath his feet. Li Fan's elite troops fire in unison, their weapons modified specifically for this moment in history. The bullets hover in the air, caught by the cultivator's spiritual pressure before they can make impact. Suddenly, the soldiers discard their rifles, tossing them high into the air in a synchronized motion. Ku Hong grabs one of the weapons, intrigued by the mechanical ingenuity of these desperate ants. He realizes these tools are useless junk anywhere else, but deadly effective in this magic-starved land. He scoffs at the mortals' audacity, preparing to wipe them out for their insolence. But his expression freezes as he senses a sudden jarring disturbance in his energy flow. A massive dragon of golden flame erupts from his hands, but it feels sluggish and heavy. The attack crashes into the city, tearing through the streets with devastating force. Buildings crumble and burn. Yet the destruction isn't as absolute as he intended. Ku Hong strains against the air, realizing his powers are being suppressed by an unseen force. He is baffled, knowing that a mere mortal army shouldn't be able to withstand a dragon's roar. Yet amidst the flames, the soldiers stand firm, protected by their sheer numbers and preparation. Dao Xuanzi spots the trap. The bullets were never meant to pierce, but to pollute. The ammunition was soaked in a corrupting miasma, staining their hands and sealing their spiritual veins. He realizes too late that this wasn't a random skirmish, but a calculated ambush waiting for their arrival. Sensing the danger, the two enemies agree to a temporary truce and attempt to flee the city. But the sky darkens as a colossal projection of the Grand Tutor blocks their escape route. Li Fan's voice booms like thunder, threatening to broadcast their stolen secrets to the entire world. The cultivators freeze in terror, wondering how a mortal could possibly know about the core formation method. While they hesitate, a second wave of blood-red projectiles rains down from the heavens. Ku Hong loses his temper, refusing to be cornered by insects. Dao Xuanzi screams a warning, realizing this next attack is far more potent than the first. The sky erupts in a crimson explosion, engulfing the two gods in a cloud of suppressive mist. Battered and surrounded, the fallen immortals hear the Grand Tutor's final offer: surrender or die. Li Fan sits amidst the carnage, smugly offering a chance to surrender to the cornered gods. But the fire cultivator Ko Hong realizes there is no escape and makes a final selfless decision. He passes his storage ring to his sword-wielding brother, urging him to flee while he holds the line. With a look of tragic resignation, Ko Hong prepares to burn the last of his life force. A golden dragon spirit rises from his body, a manifestation of 2 centuries of cultivation. The majestic energy condenses, revealing the true form of his Tao foundation. It is the Chu Dragon Branch, a mystical treasure now lost forever as the miasma claims its owner's life. Ko Hong stands tall even in death, his spirit dissipating into the wind as his legend ends. Dao Xuanzi stares at his fallen brother, while Li Fan offers a hollow guarantee of safety if he submits. Years later, Li Fan recalls that moment, remembering a strange voice that echoed from the heavens. He realizes that his plan was flawed. The miasma was too lethal, ruining any chance of capturing them alive. Back in the memory, Dao Xuanzi rejects the offer, disgusted by the use of such underhanded mortal tactics. Grief turns to rage as he declares that his brother's death at the hands of ants is an insult he cannot abide. He begins to levitate, his spiritual pressure rising as he refuses to accept this humiliating outcome. Floating above the battlefield, he addresses the mortal army, acknowledging the power they just witnessed. Since they saw his brother's foundation, he decides it is only polite to show them his own. With a dramatic gesture, he summons the full weight of the heavens and earth to construct his final attack. A colossal stone sword manifests in the sky, a terrifying monument to his power named Dao Xuan. He invites the world to witness his sword, initiating a technique meant for mutual destruction. The blade crashes down, obliterating the manor, the army, and the timeline in a blinding flash of light. As the world dissolves into white, Li Fan calls out to the system to end the simulation. He jolts awake in his room, back in his youthful body, gasping for air after witnessing true power. The sheer pressure of a foundation establishment cultivator lingers, proving that schemes alone cannot bridge the gap in strength. He reflects on Dao Xuanzi's suicide, realizing their bond was far deeper than the typical cutthroat cultivator relationship. In a world where the path to immortality is usually solitary, these two shared a brotherhood that defied the norms. A devious smile forms as Li Fan decides to change tactics. Instead of fighting both, he will manipulate their bond. Checking his stats, he sees his mental age is rapidly approaching its limit, urging him to make this next life count. Fast forward to year 35, Li Fan returns to the edge of the ruinous abyss to investigate the source of the invaders. As predicted, a massive column of white fog erupts into the sky, clearing the way for a brief window of observation. With the deadly mist temporarily gone, Li Fan peers into the depths, eager to see what horrors lie below. Deep within the abyss, a massive cliff face reveals a terrifying truth written in blood: the immortal Tao is dead. Li Fan stares at the inscription, shaken by the implication that the cultivation world itself has already perished. But the mysteries of the deep must wait, as the timeline skips ahead to the inevitable confrontation in year 50. Li Fan executes his new plan, his soldiers firing upon Ko Hong while shouting their loyalty to Dao Xuanzi. Ko Hong blocks the projectiles, stunned to recognize the scent of the forbidden immortal mortal miasma. He roars at the sky, convinced that Dao Xuanzi has broken all codes of honor to ambush him. Dao Xuanzi is bewildered, wondering why a mortal army is attacking his rival under his name. The soldiers shout a lethal lie, claiming they were ordered to kill Ko Hong to steal the core formation method. That specific secret breaks Ko Hong's logic, as he knows only the two of them are aware of its existence. Dao Xuanzi realizes the danger, understanding that someone has leaked their secrets to manipulate them. He tries to reason with his brother, but the accusation of treachery has already taken root. Ko Hong refuses to listen, launching a preemptive strike to silence the shameless villain. A streak of purple sword energy slashes down, forcing the conversation to end in violence. The attack cleaves through the architecture, signaling that the time for words has passed. Ko Hong screams in betrayal, unable to believe a century of brotherhood was discarded for a technique. He abandons all restraint, channeling his fury into a devastating fire art. The flame dragon's wrath erupts, a blinding torrent of fire aimed straight at Dao Xuanzi. Dao Xuanzi watches the flames approach, his expression grim as he accepts the fight. He summons his spiritual sword, its purple aura flaring to match the intensity of the dragon fire. Suddenly, Li Fan flips the board, ordering his troops to switch sides and assist Ko Hong. Ko Hong laughs maniacally, believing that even the mortals have turned against Dao Xuanzi's wickedness. Dao Xuanzi screams, "You fool!" realizing that they are both dancing in the palm of a manipulator's hand. But Ko Hong is too far gone, boasting of a new technique he mastered just for this occasion. He unleashes the imprisoning dragon, weaving a cage of fire to trap his opponent. The flames surround Dao Xuanzi, locking him within a searing prison of spiritual energy. Dao Xuanzi strains against the heat, his spiritual pressure rising to a breaking point. With a thunderous shout, he shatters the cage, refusing to be contained by mere fire. He ascends into the sky, summoning the full weight of his cultivation to end this farce. A colossal stone sword manifests, casting a shadow over the entire city as it descends. Ko Hong meets the ultimate attack with his own, transforming his staff into a golden dragon. Ko Hong panics as his own Dao foundation, the Shu dragon branch, begins to revolt against him. The wooden roots burst violently from his chest, turning the fire cultivator into a gruesome tree of blood. The system logs the kill. Dao Xuanzi has won, leaving his massive rusted sword as a tombstone for his brother. With the battle over, the giant blade crumbles into the ruins, marking the end of the fire cultivator's legend. Having witnessed the outcome, Li Fan tracks down the exhausted victor, who is now disguised as an old man. He approaches boldly, introducing himself as a mortal clan leader to the weary immortal. But Dao Xuanzi isn't fooled, instantly recognizing the voice that manipulated the battlefield from the shadows. Li Fan sweats nervously, realizing that even a drained foundation establishment cultivator is terrifyingly sharp. He drops the act, calling out Dao Xuanzi's hypocrisy and demanding answers about the world's barriers. The old master is stunned that a mere mortal knows about the immortal severing formation. Li Fan stands his ground, crossing his arms and demanding to know if there is truly no way out. The scene shifts to a secure bunker, where the two sit down for a grim conversation about their prison. Li Fan asks the ultimate question: is it really impossible for a mortal to leave this forsaken land? He presses harder, asking if a powerful cultivator could shield a mortal through the barrier. Dao Xuanzi looks defeated, admitting that the laws of this world offer no hope for the uninitiated. Li Fan feigns outrage, shouting about the injustice of being trapped in a cage with no key. He suggests a long game, breeding generations of cultivators until one is strong enough to break the seal. But then he bursts into laughter, mocking the absurdity of cultivating in a land without spiritual energy. He points out the cruel paradox. You need to leave to cultivate, but you need to cultivate to leave. Dao Xuanzi confirms the nightmare, stating that mortals and immortals are separated by an eternal chasm. He delivers the final, crushing truth. There is absolutely no escape for someone like Li Fan. With the interrogation over, the old man prepares to leave, seeing no further use for this conversation. But as he turns his back, Li Fan's expression shifts from curiosity to cold malice. He unleashes the immortal mortal miasma, blasting the unsuspecting cultivator with red death. Dao Xuanzi screams in agony as the corruption invades his body, bypassing his defenses entirely. He glares back in betrayal, unable to comprehend how a mortal could possess such a god-killing poison. With the last obstacle removed, Li Fan stands triumphant, having extracted the lore of this world. He learns that this immortal forsaken land was created by a catastrophic shift thousands of years ago. A mysterious plague infected the spiritual energy itself, turning the source of power into a deadly poison. It spread through the heavens, causing cultivators to rot and regress the moment they tried to draw breath. Originally, the plague infected everyone, but the mortals born without aptitude were merely asymptomatic carriers of the curse. To become a cultivator, one had to first purge this immortal mortal miasma, a toxic barrier separating the divine from the mundane. To save the sex from total infection, the infected mortals were exiled to isolated prisons known as the Immortal Forsaken Lands. Li Fan realizes the sheer absurdity of his luck. Meeting two cultivators in a prison dimension designed to be empty is a statistical miracle. He reviews the fractured memories of his past lives, painfully aware that his biological clock is ticking toward a permanent game over at age 86. After waiting bitterly for 300 years, he refuses to accept that his journey ends as a pile of dust in a forgotten cage. Dao Xuanzi stares in horror, realizing this mortal possesses a tenacity that is far more dangerous than any spiritual art. The scene shifts to a grim interrogation, where Li Fan demands to know how the original mortals were transported here in the first place. Dao Xuanzi mocks him, asking if a 70-year-old man really thinks he has enough time left to start the path of cultivation. With his own cultivation ruined by the miasma, the old immortal asks if Li Fan could even handle the truth of the outside world. Li Fan, appearing as a battered prisoner in this visualization of his struggle, accuses the old man of holding back the real secrets. Dao Xuanzi offers a devil's bargain. Help him find a way back, and he might just take Li Fan along as a pet. Li Fan scoffs at the offer, knowing that perhaps in cultivator speak usually translates to absolutely not. But the old man presses the sore spot, asking if Li Fan is truly willing to rot and die in this tiny sealed world. Li Fan deduces that the ancient migration must have used massive Dharma artifacts, like the legendary flying arcs. In the Golden Age, the skies were filled with these vessels, transporting millions across the realms in a display of unity. But then came the Great Cataclysm, a disaster so severe it grounded the fleets and shattered the trust between cultivators. Li Fan presses for details on this great cataclysm, sensing it's the key to understanding why the world is so broken. Dao Xuanzi explains that while the miasma was bad, it wasn't what truly destroyed the foundation of the cultivation world. The real horror is the great Tao of the Golden Core, a universal law that restricts how many people can succeed. He reveals a terrifying bottleneck. While many can start, the path narrows drastically, and there is only one seat at the top. The restriction is absolute. True immortal techniques cannot be cultivated by more than one person at a time. In ancient times, sects were open and knowledge was free, leading to a flourishing era of magic and cooperation. Disciples sparred and shared secrets, unaware that they were all drinking from a drying well. Then the efficiency dropped, and cultivators realized that every peer was actually a parasite stealing their energy. The Nine Yang Armor scripture shows the grim math. Nearly 1,000 users means nobody is making any progress at all. Brotherhood turned to bloodshed as they realized the only way to advance was to murder everyone else practicing their technique. Li Fan questions why techniques aren't scarce, and Dao Xuanzi reveals they are all incomplete fragments used as stepping stones. To advance, one must switch methods entirely, a process that usually destroys a cultivator's foundation and kills them. But there is a cheat code, the Supreme Primordial True Scripture, a technique that allows for a safe reset without losing your stats. Dao Xuanzi reveals that this miraculous technique appeared suspiciously just when the world needed it most. He explains that the method Li Fan stole is actually a direct path to the legendary nascent soul realm. The old master emphasizes the technique's value before recounting the lessons he learned from his fallen rival. In the dungeon, the prisoner shares rumors of mortals who supposedly found a way back to the cultivation world. Dao Xuanzi clings to these whispers, believing that where there is smoke, there must be a way out. The chained cultivator marvels at the old man's refusal to accept his grim fate. Desperate for a lead, the old master offers freedom and restitution in exchange for the prisoner's cooperation. He even promises to return the ultimate prize, the very scripture that started this entire mess. Cao Hong is stunned, unable to believe his enemy would part with such a priceless treasure. Seeing a glimmer of hope, the prisoner agrees to help with a renewed, desperate energy. With their alliance formed, Li Fan spends the next 16 years scouring the globe for ancient records. He mobilizes entire armies to excavate tombs, ignoring the protests of his exhausted subjects. But after decades of searching, he stands in an empty chamber, realizing he has found absolutely nothing. His physical body is failing, trembling like a candle flame about to be snuffed out by the wind. Before death claims him, he decides to inspect the loot he secured from the two fallen gods. He retrieves the legendary Golden Chapter, a technique currently practiced by exactly 0 people. It is a cruel irony to hold the key to immortality while lacking the spiritual sense to even read it. Next, he examines the massive sword, which has lost its luster following its master's demise. But as he stares at the rusted blade, his system suddenly pings with an unexpected notification. The interface identifies the damaged weapon as a battery, offering to drain its energy for a recharge. He envisions the power he could wield, seeing a path that transcends his mortal limitations. Without hesitation, he commands the system to consume the ancient weapon. The sword dissolves into data, filling his anchor bar by a measly but significant 1%. The system reveals that a full charge will create a save point, allowing him to skip the early game grind. A greedy realization strikes him. The world is full of broken trash that is treasure to his system. If he can just escape this prison, he can farm infinite save points from the debris of history. With the sword consumed and nothing left to learn, he decides to manually end this simulation. The familiar game over screen appears, offering him a choice of rewards for his lifetime of effort. Back in the void, he ignores the stats and memories, pointing decisively at the item retention option. He grabs the golden chapter, securing the ultimate cultivation manual for his next run. Li Fan smiles with renewed confidence, realizing that this restart offers him a chance to perfect his strategy. He reflects on his previous life, where his brute force excavation of tombs caused too much panic and resistance. This time, he decides to play the long game, manipulating the world's culture to do the digging for him. Time flows forward as he begins his sixth life, operating from the shadows to subtly rewrite history. By year 5, he fabricates the ancient seeking school, presenting forged texts to the court to spark curiosity. When the emperor conveniently falls ill, the imperial physicians are left scratching their heads in confusion. Li Fan's fake school steps in with a miracle elixir, offering a cure where medical science failed. The emperor makes a full recovery, proving that snake oil actually works if you have a time traveler's knowledge. Years later, a massive ring of tomb robbers is arrested in Li Fan's jurisdiction of MANHWA. Instead of executing them, Li Fan petitions the throne to enslave them, preserving their unique skill set for his own use. By year 15, the aging emperor is obsessed with immortality, deploying armies to scour the earth for pills. The emperor dies searching, but he successfully turns the entire nation into a society of grave robbers. Li Fan watches from the shadows, pleased that his cultural engineering has taken root so perfectly. A new puppet takes the throne, but the real power remains firmly in the hands of the Grand Tutor. In year 23, his scholars discover the existence of the lost Qi dynasty. A massive bounty is issued, promising nobility to anyone who can locate a Qi dynasty tomb. 2 years later, the resting place of the first Qi emperor, Yixing, is finally unearthed. Li Fan leads his team into the depths, eager to see what a 1,000-year-old emperor took to his grave. The walls are lined with vibrant murals, depicting a history that the current world has long forgotten. They reach the main burial chamber, a colossal space designed to mimic the starry heavens above. In the center sits a strange thatched hut, woven entirely from priceless golden threads. Li Fan orders his men to open the structure, identifying the humble hut as the emperor's coffin. The doors swing open, revealing the final resting place of a man who once ruled the world. Li Fan steps inside, his eyes scanning for any trace of spiritual energy or cultivation secrets. He finds a memorial tablet identifying the emperor as merely an outer disciple of the Taihang sect. It becomes clear that this man was a failure in the cultivation world, exiled to rule over mortals. Even in death, Yixing clung to his lowly sect identity rather than his imperial title. Li Fan deduces that this disciple was likely left behind to manage the logistics of the Great Migration. He wonders if the massive flying ark used for the transport might still be hidden somewhere nearby. The main chamber is empty of loot, so he orders his men to dig up everything in the surrounding area. Li Fan issues a decree to the world, promising a marquee title to anyone who can find a clue about the immortal ark. 35 years into the simulation, a scout finally kneels before the throne with the news Li Fan has been waiting for. The report describes a mysterious tomb protected by a force that violently repels any intruders with blue energy. Recognizing a spiritual formation, Li Fan orders his men to bring the corrupting immortal mortal miasma to breach the seal. Soldiers haul buckets of the red poison, preparing to defile the ancient defense with brute force. The barrier shatters under the toxic assault, its purity no match for the concentrated corruption. With the path clear, Li Fan warns his troops to tread carefully and prioritize the recovery of the flying ark. A sudden shout from the excavation team announces that they have found an object resembling the legendary vessel. Forgetting all decorum, the Grand Tutor sprints toward the discovery like a kid on Christmas morning. But as he draws closer, his excitement hits a wall of confusion and disbelief. The legendary ark that traverses the heavens turns out to be a tiny, wooden toy boat. The tomb belongs to Qian Hong, a cultivator who fled into this energy-void land to escape his enemies. Li Fan reads the wall inscriptions, piecing together the tragic final days of the tomb's owner. 3,000 years ago, Qian Hong arrived here wounded and desperate, hiding from a lethal pursuit. But without spirit stones to replenish his energy, his cultivation began to wither in this barren land. He spent decades searching for a way out, hoping the ancient exiles had left behind a transport ship. He eventually found a flying ark, but his hope was crushed when he realized the core formation was damaged. Lacking the skills to repair it, he died in despair, clutching the useless vessel in his final moments. His final message offers a choice of treasures to anyone kind enough to sweep his grave. Li Fan stares at the stone tablet, realizing that even immortals can die like dogs if their luck runs out. He picks up the cultivation manuals, noting with surprise that the system lists current cultivators 1. His eyes widen as he realizes the implication. Someone outside is actively using these lost techniques. Logic dictates that after 3 millennia, any original practitioner should have turned to dust long ago. He deduces that these manuals are merely copies, linked to a master source held by the great sects. The major powers likely recycle these techniques, reclaiming them whenever a disciple dies to maintain control. Li Fan shakes his head at the corruption, realizing the cultivation world is just a glorified pyramid scheme. He turns his attention to the Tai Hang Arc, the very tool used to migrate mortals in ancient times. A wicked grin spreads across his face as he realizes that while he can't fix it, he knows someone who can. The timeline jumps to year 50, where Li Fan interrupts the duel between the two gods with a bold shout. The two immortals look down in confusion, stunned that a mere mortal is lecturing them on the value of their techniques. Li Fan plays the gracious host, inviting the two nuclear warheads down for a chat. He spins a tale of generational vindication, claiming this meeting was foretold by his ancestors. The fire cultivator Ku Hong is intrigued and asks for the name of this bold mortal. Li Fan introduces himself, setting the stage for the greatest Khan in history. Dao Xuanzi remains skeptical, questioning how a mortal ancestor could predict the future so accurately. Li Fan feigns offense, acting as if their doubt is a personal insult to his lineage. Cao Hong explains that even in the cultivation world, such foresight is unheard of. Li Fan drops the name Taiyan Sect, and the atmosphere in the room shifts instantly. The two gods freeze, the weight of that ancient name crushing their skepticism. Cao Hong loses his composure, recognizing the legendary sect known for absolute deduction. Li Fan sighs deeply, letting the silence do the heavy lifting for him. He confirms his ancestors' membership, producing a relic to sell the lie. He weaves a backstory about an ancestor who loved calculation more than cultivation. The tale continues, describing how his ancestor led the Great Migration to save his family. Dao Xuanzi is hooked, asking why they were specifically stopped today. Li Fan explains that their arrival marks the fulfillment of a millennial prophecy. He claims he had to intervene when he saw them fighting over a core formation method. With a flourish, he reveals that his family possesses a method leading straight to the golden core. Ko Hong is ecstatic, realizing they no longer need to kill each other for advancement. Li Fan adds the cherry on top. The legendary Tai Hang Arc, a ticket out of this prison. He explains that the prophecy specifically called for a swordsman and an artifact refiner to fix the boat. Ko Hong confirms their identities, marveling at the terrifying accuracy of the Taiyan sect. Li Fan invites them to inspect the goods, knowing greed will do the rest. Dao Xuanzi checks his rival, ensuring Ko Hong stays behind to avoid a conflict. Ko Hong agrees to wait, too excited by the prospect of escape to argue. Li Fan leads the swordsman away, successfully splitting the party. They descend into a secure vault, the air growing heavy and ominous. Suddenly, Li Fan reveals the room is flooded with the deadly immortal mortal miasma. He claims it's a necessary security measure to protect the treasure from thieves. With the cultivator suppressed by the gas, Li Fan presents the ultimate bait. Dao Xuanzi is impressed by the mortal's intellect and agrees to bring his partner on board for the repairs. Li Fan plays the generous benefactor, laughing as he promises to hand over the cultivation method once the job is done. Ku Hong is skeptical at first, asking if a mere mortal really possesses the ancestral codes they need. Dao Xuanzi steps in to vouch for the Khan, claiming he saw the technique with his own eyes. The promise of power is too much to resist, and Ko Hong's face twists with greedy anticipation. The two cultivators stand ready, completely unaware they are being played by a man with a system interface. They decide against violence, fearing that a descendant of the Taiyan sect might have lethal traps prepared. Dao Xuanzi argues that a little manual labor is a small price to pay for a nascent soul technique. Ko Hong agrees, eager to test his artifact refinement skills on such a legendary vessel. Li Fan hands over the small wooden boat, entrusting his escape plan to the very men he plans to surpass. Days later, the repairs are complete, and the tiny toy has regained its mystical glow. Li Fan inspects the work, noting that the core functions are restored even if the weapons are offline. He calculates that breaking the barrier is now possible, provided he doesn't have to fight a cultivator to do it. Ku Hong explains the Ark's capabilities, detailing how it can shift sizes to accommodate their needs. However, fuel is tight, so they've only loaded enough spirit stones for a one-way trip out of hell. He points out a fatal flaw. Piloting the ship requires spiritual energy, which Li Fan supposedly lacks. But Li Fan defies the laws of cultivation, launching the massive golden ark into the sky with ease. Cao Hong is stunned, sweating as he watches a mortal perform a feat that should be impossible. Li Fan laughs it off as a trivial family secret, hiding the fact that his system is doing the heavy lifting. With the test flight a success, he invites the two laborers to collect their payment. 3 days later, the transaction is finished, and the cultivators come to say their final goodbyes. They explain that their spirit stones are nearly depleted, forcing them to leave before they lose their power. Ko Hong acts like an old buddy, slapping Li Fan on the chest and inviting him to visit if he ever escapes. He even provides a hand-drawn map since they lack the jade slips usually used for navigation. The two gods transform into streaks of light, shooting into the sky and leaving the prison world behind. Li Fan watches them go, his path to freedom finally clear of obstacles. High in the air, Ku Hong admits he's impressed by the mortal's sheer tenacity and mental fortitude. He reflects on the universal drive for longevity, realizing that without it, everything is meaningless. As they fly, he asks Dao Xuanzi to confirm that the technique they received is the real deal. Dao Xuanzi gives a reassuring smile, though his promise to help Li Fan later sounds suspiciously empty. The Taihang arc surges upward, leaving the confines of the prison world to brave the unknown abyss. A shimmering barrier envelops the hull, shielding the vessel from the chaotic forces trying to crush it. Violent tremors rock the ship as if it hit a solid wall, signaling their entry into the dangerous astral wind layer. Dao Xuanzi notes with concern that these winds are sharp enough to shred a mortal body instantly without protection. For half an hour, the arc cuts through the blue turbulence, a tiny speck of order in a chaotic storm. Suddenly, the violent shaking ceases, replaced by a blinding explosion of golden light. Li Fan stands on the deck, mesmerized by the infinite radiance that lies ahead. In his mind, he narrates a perfect future where he reaches the cultivation world and forms a golden core in record time. The fantasy escalates as he ascends to the immortal realm, looking down on the world as a supreme emperor. He imagines shattering the final spatial barriers, stepping into the god realm to continue his dominance. From a lowly miner to a god king, his dream self conquers every challenge with absurd ease. He stands at the apex of existence, basking in the glory of being the most powerful entity in the cosmos. But the dream takes a weird turn, demoting him to a gatekeeper forced to restart his grind from scratch. Reality hits him like a brick, and he wakes up screaming, realizing the success was just a hallucination. Hanging upside down, he realizes the illusory light layer almost trapped him in a permanent daydream while the ship turned around. The scenery shifts dramatically, revealing a landscape of cold, towering mountains and clouds. The Ark has entered the inversion layer, floating silently above a world that seems to defy gravity. Li Fan tumbles to the floor, realizing the ship navigated itself out of the illusion while he was busy fantasizing. He scrambles to his feet, deciding to let the ancient autopilot handle the steering while he just acts as the battery. A beam of energy shoots forward as the Ark locks onto its pre-programmed destination. The environment shifts again, plunging the vessel into the searing heat of the flowing fire layer. Flames lick at the hull, but the ancient vessel glides through the inferno without a scratch. Li Fan realizes this ship was built specifically for this commute, complete with a convenient backdoor for unskilled pilots. Emboldened by the ship's competence, he pours more power into the engine to speed through the flames. He relaxes, letting the migration tool do what it was designed to do 1,000 years ago. The heat vanishes instantly, replaced by the bone-chilling cold of the profound ice layer. Jagged shards of ice fill the void, but the Ark weaves through the frozen maze with impossible grace. Next comes the thunderstorm layer, where arcs of purple lightning threaten to fry the ship's systems. Finally, the chaos settles into an oppressive silence as they enter the 7th layer. The darkness layer. But the darkness isn't empty. A colossal, tooth-filled maw opens wide to swallow the tiny spark of hope. Li Fan checks his system, calculating that a few more brushes with death will unlock a second save slot. By year 5, his patience wears thin, and he finds himself back at the edge of the eastern abyssal ruins. He peers into the chasm, telling himself he's just window shopping and definitely not doing anything stupid. The abyss swirls with ominous energy, whispering promises of power and certain death. His eyes glow with reckless ambition, tempted to launch the Ark immediately despite the risks. He questions why a man with a time loop cheat needs to wait 15 years for a safe window. Rationalizing his impatience, he decides that cowardice is the real enemy of the great Tao. He convinces himself that he can outmaneuver the darkness monster if he just pays attention. With misplaced confidence, he steps closer, ready to challenge the void on his own terms. A massive pillar of light erupts from the depths, illuminating the terrifying scale of the ruins. The blood-red warning returns, screaming that the path to immortality is a dead end. Li Fan stumbles back, gasping as a cacophony of voices nearly lures him into a suicidal jump. Fast forward to year 20, and with his system fully charged, he returns with a safety net in place. He pilots the Taihang Arc through the upper layers, navigating the storms with practiced ease. Hovering above the darkness layer, he uses the storm's light to scan for the beasts that killed him before. The scan comes up empty, leaving him to fly blind into the most dangerous zip code in existence. Seeing the light fading, he abandons caution and dives straight into the pitch-black void. But the darkness has teeth, and the colossal whale emerges to swallow him whole once again. Li Fan realizes his theory was correct. This guardian beast has a specific hatred for mortals. The Ark barely dodges the closing jaws, a tiny speck of wood against a mountain of flesh. Panic sets in as he maneuvers desperately to avoid becoming fish food. The massive maw looms behind him, relentless in its pursuit of the intruder. Li Fan stares in horror, realizing the sheer scale of the entity blocking his escape. The monster's eye opens, glowing with ancient malice as it locks onto its prey. He curses the creature's efficiency, wondering how something so big can be so stealthy. Over the next 15 years, he turns this suicide run into a routine, testing the beast's defenses. But the whale learns too, intercepting him faster with every failed attempt. Each run ends in retreat, the Ark fleeing back to the safety of the upper layers. Finally, in year 35, he realizes the white mist distracts the beast, buying him precious seconds. Seizing the window, Li Fan pushes the Ark to maximum velocity, betting everything on speed. The simulation concludes, and Li Fan sacrifices his rewards to speed up the charging process for the next loop. A glance at his stats confirms a grim reality. His mental age is capped, and the clock on his sanity is ticking. He calculates he has about 700 years of psychological endurance left before his mind shatters completely. In his 8th lifetime, he returns to Qianhong's tomb, treating the ancient grave like a personal battery charger. A satisfied smirk crosses his face as the system devours the artifacts, boosting his anchor point to over 50%. By year 5, he's camping out by the abyss, waiting for the mist to clear with the patience of a saint. But year 20 brings only death, as the giant whale swallows his ship like a light snack. Year 35 ends the same way, proving that the beast doesn't care about his persistence. Despite the constant dying, his piloting skills improve, turning him into the best driver in a dead world. By year 50, he's an old man again, realizing his aging reflexes are too slow to outmaneuver the Guardian. He decides to outsource the problem, inviting the 2 cultivators for a drink to pick their ancient brains. He unrolls a painting of the monster, asking the so-called experts if they recognize the Abyss Dweller. He spins a convenient lie about his ancestor, claiming the warning was passed down through his family. Ko Hong is baffled, wondering how he missed a creature the size of a continent during his descent. Dao Xuanzi strokes his beard, the detailed drawing jogging a memory from the archives of his sect. He identifies the beast as the rift-splitting whale, a legendary pet of the long-gone beast-taming sect. Ko Hong's eyes light up with recognition, recalling the myths of the void-dwelling Leviathan. Li Fan leans in eagerly, asking if there's a secret trick to sneaking past the oversized goldfish. But Dao Xuanzi shrugs, admitting that since the beast is extinct, its behavior is a mystery to everyone. Li Fan sighs, realizing that even the gods are useless when you really need tech support. In his 9th lifetime, he heads back to the tomb, hoping to squeeze a bit more juice from the stone tablet. But the artifact is tapped out, refusing to yield even a drop of energy for his system. With no other options, he launches the Ark again, blasting through the elemental storms of the barrier. He stares intensely into the darkness, his heart pounding as he enters the whale's hunting grounds. To his surprise, the void remains silent, the massive predator nowhere to be seen. He holds his breath as the ship descends, the bottom of the abyss finally within reach. But just as he relaxes, a blinding light erupts, revealing the beast was watching him the whole time. The Ark dives frantically, a tiny wooden chip falling toward a bottomless throat. Li Fan analyzes the attack, confused by why the monster ignored him until the very last second. Suddenly, the solution clicks. The whale is blind to objects moving at a constant velocity. Looking back at the memory, Dao Xuanzi recalls the true horror of the abyss that guards the exit. His eyes widen in retrospective terror, remembering the sight that nearly broke his mind. It wasn't just a single rift-splitting whale patrolling the darkness, but a coordinated ambush. The void was teeming with hundreds of the Leviathans, a biological blockade designed to catch any escapees. Thousands of gaping maws filled the silence, making the statistical probability of survival effectively 0. The camera pulls back to reveal the grim cosmology of their prison. The immortal Forsaken Land is merely a dying bubble, drifting further away from the main cultivation universe. But in the simulation, the Taihang Ark manages to thread the needle, shooting out of the abyss like a comet. The vessel breaks through the final barrier, soaring toward the majestic peaks of the true cultivation world. Dao Xuanzi weeps openly, his centuries of despair washing away as he breathes the spiritual air. He dies with a smile, content that his miserable existence in the cage wasn't in vain. The simulation concludes, and Li Fan returns to the darkness of his room, armed with new data. After 9 lifetimes and 500 years of grinding, he has finally touched the threshold of immortality. But this time, he pauses at the reward screen, his eyes catching a specific damaged item. He chooses to retain the halting Steely fragment, sacrificing a speed run for a tactical experiment. He touches the screen with determination, eager to verify a suspicion about the laws of this reality. Back in year 3, he skips the politics and heads straight for the barrier guarding Chen Hong's tomb. Instead of using the messy miasma, he pulls out the fragment he carried over from the future. The barrier reacts instantly, resonating with the piece of stone in his hand like a magnet. The defensive formation melts away, unable to distinguish between the key in his hand and the lock on the door. Li Fan realizes that unique artifacts in this world follow a strict rule. Duplicates cannot exist separately. By bringing a copy from the future, he forced the universe to merge it with the past version, repairing them both. He recalls the brute force method of his past lives, realizing how inefficient he used to be. Inside the tomb, the fragment on the pedestal looks significantly less damaged than before. It's still not fully repaired, but the fusion has restored enough power to make it a viable asset. Jumping to year 20, Li Fan begins a ruthless purge of the corrupt aristocracy to fund his trip. He strips the wealthy of their gold and jewels, stockpiling resources for the economy he's about to enter. But gold isn't enough. He demands grain, filling the massive Taihang Ark until it groans under the weight. The commoners bow in awe, mistaking his logistical hoarding for a divine miracle. With the hold packed tight, Li Fan prepares to leave the mortal world behind, this time for real. After 10 days of sailing, the Taihang Ark begins to lose momentum as its energy reserves run dry. Li Fan scans the horizon with a telescope, spotting a silhouette drifting in the endless blue. It turns out to be a massive ship, battered and sinking rapidly into the depths. The hull is breached, and the desperate passengers are already floundering in the water. One survivor clings to a raft, shouting that he has signaled an immortal master for aid. Li Fan raises an eyebrow, intrigued by the mention of another cultivator in this desolate world. Sensing an opportunity for intel, he stows the Ark and dives into the ocean to investigate. He swims silently toward the chaos, intending to observe this so-called master up close. Blending in with the victims, he adopts the persona of a drowning struggle. He flails alongside the others, crying out for salvation to sell the act. A commanding voice demands silence as a figure descends from the clouds. The arrival is shrouded in a blurring spell, hiding his true features from the mortals. A sudden pressure descends, rendering Li Fan and the others physically unable to speak. The mysterious figure weaves a spell, his hands glowing with spiritual energy. The sinking ship defies gravity, rising from the ocean's grip with a groan of timber. It hovers in the air, water cascading off its deck as the magic takes hold. With a casual wave of his hand, the massive hole in the hull knits itself back together. The cultivator moves with blurring speed, manipulating the environment effortlessly. An invisible force scoops the drowning passengers out of the water and tosses them back onto the deck. Hovering above the rescued crew, the figure demands to know who sent the signal. A man named Su Changyu kneels, identifying himself as the one who called for help. The cultivator reminds him of the rules. Once they arrive, their connection is severed. Su Changyu bows low, reciting the script that he has never met this powerful stranger. Satisfied with the discretion, the figure turns to guide the vessel. The ship surges forward, propelled by a spell rather than the wind. The immortal master stands at the bow like a statue, offering no further words. A heavy silence falls over the passengers, too awestruck and terrified to speak. Hours pass until nightfall, when the lights of civilization finally appear on the horizon. They approach a bustling island filled with ships, a hub of activity in the middle of nowhere. But instead of the docks, the ship veers toward a secluded cave on the island's dark side. Li Fan observes the crowd, realizing these people are fellow exiles from the immortal Forsaken Land. Unlike the ignorant mortals of his homeland, these refugees seem fully aware of the cultivation world's existence. They even have established smuggling routes, a detail that makes Li Fan stroke his fake beard in deep thought. A chubby refugee taps him on the shoulder, trying to make small talk and asking about his background. Li Fan isn't here to make friends, so he gives the man a cold, piercing glare. A swift, silent palm strike to the chest shuts the man up before he can ask too many questions. The man recoils in shock, realizing he just tried to bond with a dangerous predator. Terrified, he decides Li Fan must be a high-ranking official in disguise and wisely backs off. At dawn, the group gathers in a hall to receive their new identities from a green-robed instructor. The man lays out the script. They are now tragic survivors from Western Dayu Island. He drills the backstory into their heads, ensuring everyone knows their lines perfectly. Their home was supposedly destroyed by a windstorm, forcing them to flee here as refugees. Following orders, they change into rags and are escorted out of the caves by a group of black-clad handlers. They march through dark, hidden tunnels, moving like cargo rather than people. Emerging into the city at night, they blend in with the scenery, ignored by locals who are used to seeing displaced souls. The procession winds through the streets until they arrive at the gates of a large, imposing manor. They wait in silence as a servant announces their arrival to the powers that be. The group is ushered through a side entrance, keeping their presence low profile. Inside, the hall is packed with other refugee groups, revealing the scale of this human trafficking operation. Finally, it's their turn, and a man named Steward Zhao steps forward to handle the logistics. Zhao approaches the registration desk, ready to sell their sob story to the officials. He presents the group to the registrars, confirming they are the batch from Dayu Island. An elder with intense eyes questions their status, and Zhao confirms they were once wealthy nobles. The official smirks, noting how quickly fortune fades without the protection of an immortal master. He mocks their fallen status, describing their lost wealth as a bubble popped by the storm. Now these former aristocrats are nothing more than beggars seeking asylum on Liuli Island. The elder listens impassively as Zhao mentions that the storm's reach was vast, affecting even this island. Reports claim over 200 islands were wiped out, a convenient tragedy to cover their arrival. The official praises the mercy of the immortal masters and assures Zhao that Tianbao Lu will be rewarded. With the pleasantries over, the processing begins, turning people into paperwork. Li Fan eyes the steward suspiciously, wondering why a human trafficker is being so helpful. The group is processed with surprising efficiency, herded into a courtyard like well-behaved cattle. Zhao drops the friendly act, demanding they sign the indenture contract now that they are registered. Li Fan produces the document, ready to solidify his stolen identity. He bites his finger, preparing to sign his life away in blood. He presses his print onto the name Su Changyu, officially becoming the man who called for help. The contract burns with spiritual energy as Li Fan promises to finalize the deal later. Zhao wipes his brow, complaining that dealing with departed realm trash is barely worth the commission. He switches back to sales mode, explaining that their ID talismans grant them free housing. He adds a sweetener to the deal, free grain for a year, ensuring they don't starve immediately. Li Fan cuts to the chase, asking the only question that matters: how do they start cultivating? Zhao explains the catch. Coming from the exile lands means their bodies are saturated with toxic miasma. The other refugees panic, realizing they are essentially walking pollution hazards. Zhao lists the first option, soaking in the body-purifying spirit pool to wash away the corruption. But there's a snag. The pool is expensive to run and only opens once every 3 years. He does the math, revealing they have a 2-year wait before the next bath time. Even then, spots are limited, and Zhao mocks the idea of refugees beating the locals for a ticket. Li Fan ignores the mockery and demands to hear the alternatives. Zhao presents option 2, a slow grind using the profound yellow heart-cleansing incantation. It's cheap and safe, but it takes 5 or 6 years of strict dieting to see any results. Li Fan clenches his fist, knowing he doesn't have the patience for a 5-year detox. Zhao's expression darkens as he prepares to reveal the third, far nastier option. He leans in with a sinister glint, suggesting they become test subjects for the immortal masters. The group stands in stunned silence, sensing that being a lab rat is a poor career choice. Zhao explains that the masters love studying miasma, and they take volunteers every year. The process involves forcibly extracting the poison, a method that looks as violent as it sounds. On the bright side, it's fast, clearing the body in just a few months. The downside is that the pain usually drives the subjects completely insane before they finish. Li Fan looks down in disappointment, asking if there is any method that doesn't involve waiting or torture. Zhao mentions a final, mythical method of body reconstruction, but dismisses it as a fantasy for the elite. The refugee housing is dense but functional, a small step up from being homeless in a strange land. A guide hands Li Fan the key to his new life, leaving him to settle into anonymity. The interior is Spartan, offering nothing but a bed and the silence he desperately needs. Li Fan finally relaxes, grateful that the initial infiltration went smoother than expected. He reflects on his travel companions, noting that they are mostly useless fodder with no cultivation potential. His priority is purging the miasma, but he knows he must be careful with the mountain of treasure he's hoarding. Flashing gold in a refugee camp is a great way to get robbed, so he resolves to keep a low profile. His train of thought is derailed by a sudden, suspicious noise at the door. A shadow looms against the paper screen, announcing its presence with a familiar voice. Li Fan doesn't do visitors, so he summons a blade of spiritual energy just in case. He peers through the crack, his eyes narrowing as he identifies the late-night caller. It's the chubby refugee from the boat, asking dangerous questions about Li Fan's origins. The man drops the friendly act, demanding to know why Li Fan sneaked onto the island. Li Fan's expression turns icy as he asks how exactly this fool figured it out. The man explains that he saw Li Fan emerge from the ocean, not the sinking ship. He realized later that Li Fan was never part of the original refugee group to begin with. Proud of his detective work, the man points an accusing finger, thinking he has the upper hand. Li Fan appears behind him like a phantom, complimenting the man's sharp eyes. He asks the most important question: is there anyone else who shares this little secret? The fool admits he told no one, thinking this exclusivity makes his blackmail more valuable. That confirmation seals his fate, as a blade pierces his heart before he can finish his sentence. The would-be blackmailer collapses, realizing too late that he tried to hustle a time-traveling warlord. Li Fan wastes no time, summoning blue flames to dispose of the evidence. He scoffs at the man's stupidity, noting that cleverness without strength is just a fast track to the grave. The body dissolves into ash, ensuring that this loose end is permanently tied off. He cleans the floor with practiced efficiency, erasing the only witness to his true identity. He reasons that since the man kept it a secret, his disappearance will just be another unsolved mystery. The local authorities and the mysterious immortal master are too busy hiding their own secrets to investigate a missing nobody. As long as no body is found, Li Fan can simply deny ever seeing the man again. With his cover secure, he turns his attention to the map of the Kongyun Sea to plan his next move. The local economy revolves around the liuli fish, a species prized for the mystical pearls occasionally found within them. These pearls are a critical ingredient for elixirs, forcing the island's ruler to enforce a strict annual quota. The tax rate is nothing short of robbery, with the manor claiming 70% of every catch, leaving the fishermen with scraps. To make matters worse, finding the fish requires a spirit lure, a controlled item that makes private fishing punishable by immediate execution. However, a recent fleet returned with more than just fish, having stumbled upon a shipwreck loaded with sunken wealth. Divers recovered chests of gold and jewels, though the manor's greedy 70% tax policy applies to salvage operations as well. The discovery causes a stir, drawing the attention of Steward Qian, the man who controls the island's purse strings. Li Fan sees a golden opportunity to launder the massive fortune he brought from the Taihang Arc by faking a shipwreck discovery. He reviews the island's power structure, noting that Steward Qian holds the fleet spots while Stewards Zhao and Zhou are eager to muscle in. He recalls Steward Zhao's peculiar interest in him during registration and decides to pull that thread to see where it leads. Li Fan heads to the Heavenly Treasure Tower, hoping to leverage Zhao's curiosity into a business partnership. But the reception is icy, with the tower's guards blocking his path and refusing to announce his arrival. He argues with the stone-faced sentries, questioning the logic of turning away a paying customer. Li Fan wonders if his status as a refugee from the departed realm has suddenly made him persona non grata. After doing some digging, he uncovers the grim truth about the real Su Changyu's past interactions with the tower. It turns out the original Su Changyu was a desperate man who volunteered to be a test subject to cure his miasma. He had signed a lethal waiver, essentially selling his body to the tower's researchers for a chance at a cure. The contract was fulfilled when he left, meaning the tower no longer has any obligation or connection to him. Li Fan realizes that Zhao's interest wasn't kindness, but shock that a lab rat had survived and returned with his sanity intact. Armed with this knowledge, Li Fan returns to the tower, refusing to take no for an answer. The guard loses his patience, shouting threats at the persistent refugee who seems to have a death wish. Li Fan ignores the hostility, loudly declaring that he is here to trade, not to beg. The commotion draws a crowd, forcing the tower's hand as whispers ripple through the onlookers. Suddenly, a higher-up intervenes, and the guard's scowl turns into a reluctant ushering motion toward the interior. Inside, the treatment shifts from hostile to hospitable, as a maid serves him a steaming cup of tea. Li Fan takes a slow sip, his senses on high alert for any poison or subtle traps. He compliments the flavor, playing the part of a refined gentleman rather than a desperate refugee. A man enters the room explaining that the tea is Dayu Pale Dragon, a rare blend from the very island Li Fan claims to be from. The host notes that with Dayu Island destroyed, this tea has become a priceless relic of a lost home. Li Fan realizes the tea is a test, a subtle trap to see if Su Changyu reacts with the grief of a man who lost his homeland. Li Fan plays the humble guest, offering polite flattery to the stern elder across the table. But Elder Sun cuts through the charm, demanding to know why a refugee has returned to his doorstep. Li Fan drops the act of a grieving noble, stating clearly that he is here to discuss a business deal. Sun scoffs at the absurdity, looking at the destitute man like he's a bad joke. Li Fan's eyes narrow, his gaze holding a weight that suggests he's more than he appears. The elder remains skeptical, his expression hardening as he waits for the punchline. He challenges Li Fan to speak, though his posture screams that he's ready to call security. Li Fan drops the bait, asking if the tower is interested in securing a quota for the seafaring fleet. The elder's imagination instantly fills with visions of rare fish and gold, the universal language of greed. He admits that the tower is always hungry for profit, but his tone remains cautious. He explains that the quotas are tightly controlled by a rival steward, making access nearly impossible. Li Fan smiles confidently, promising that if he can just meet Steward Zhao, he will handle the persuasion. Sun hesitates, calculating whether this stranger is a genius or just a lunatic. Li Fan's intense stare pushes the needle, forcing the elder to take the gamble. Sun agrees to arrange the meeting, deciding that a conversation is a cheap price for a potential fortune. A sweet voice interrupts, promising to chop Li Fan into chum if he wastes their time. Li Fan bows to the true boss of the tower, acknowledging the veiled shopkeeper with a respectful nod. He thanks her for the chance, completely unfazed by the casual threat of dismemberment. She rests her chin on her hand, eyeing him with a mix of curiosity and amusement. Li Fan assures her that he delivers on his promises, projecting the aura of a seasoned veteran. She giggles, warning him that the tower will expect a massive cut if he actually pulls this off. Li Fan recites the island's laws, noting that captains are entitled to keep 3/10 of their haul. He stuns them by offering to surrender his entire share, splitting it evenly between Zhao and the tower. The shopkeeper is baffled, unable to comprehend why a man would go to such lengths for zero profit. Li Fan reaches out, revealing that his true target isn't wealth but access. He demands the one thing gold can't buy, a spot in the body-purifying spirit pool. The room goes silent as the hosts realize this refugee is trying to buy his way into cultivation. The shopkeeper stares at him, processing the sheer audacity of his request. She bursts into laughter, finding his ambition hilarious given his apparent age. With a mocking smile, she asks why an uncle like him is still chasing the dream of immortality. The shopkeeper agrees to the proposal, deciding to take a gamble on the ambitious refugee. She instructs him to wait for a notification, and Li Fan provides his address with professional calm. As he walks away, the mysterious woman watches him go, intrigued by his unshakable confidence. Before leaving, Li Fan confirms the price of the spirit pool spot, ensuring his math is correct. The shopkeeper calculates that 5 years of fleet profits would indeed cover the astronomical fee. But something about his demeanor lingers in her mind, unsettling her usual composure. She recalls the terrifying depth in his eyes, realizing he is definitely not just a displaced uncle. On the way home, Li Fan stops at a pharmacy to buy the basic cleansing incantation and herbs. He decides to test his own aptitude while waiting, hoping he might be a hidden genius who doesn't need the pool. He spends the next few days in seclusion, meditating and waiting for the political gears to turn. But his peace is shattered by a shocking piece of news. Su Changyu is dead. The body returned to the island is nothing but a twitching pile of biological horror. It turns out the original Su Changyu, whose identity Li Fan stole, met a gruesome end as a volunteer lab rat. Since the refugees are too poor for a funeral, Li Fan pays for a proper burial to maintain his cover. The young heir, Xiao Heng, weeps for his fallen friend while Li Fan offers a silent sigh. He reflects on the original Su Changyu, a man of strong will who was simply chewed up by this cruel world. Even a man of decent character couldn't survive the first step of purging the miasma. Standing in the rain, Li Fan is reminded that the path to immortality is paved with failures. Returning to his routine, he dives deeper into the profound yellow heart-cleansing incantation. He cultivates diligently for a month, expecting the standard results promised by the manual. But while others glow with progress after 2 weeks, Li Fan remains stubbornly normal, proving he is definitely not the chosen one. He accepts that he is statistically average, just as the messenger from the tower finally arrives. Following the summons, he meets Steward Zhao in a private courtyard owned by the tower. Zhao greets him, noting that it has been a while since their first encounter. He reveals a secret, claiming he was born with unique eyes that can distinguish truth from lies. He explains that these eyes allow him to see the moral alignment of those he speaks with. During their first meeting, he saw a soft white light around Li Fan, proving his lack of ill intent. Li Fan is genuinely surprised, realizing the cultivation world has cheat codes he hasn't seen yet. Li Fan connects the dots, realizing Zhao knew the tower officials were lying during registration. Zhao shrugs it off, warning Li Fan that knowing the truth is less important than keeping his mouth shut. Steward Zhao justifies his cooperation, noting that gathering refugees is technically an order from the Immortal Master anyway. Li Fan presses for the fleet command, but Zhao hesitates, citing his lack of seniority. He explains that handing the fleet to a rookie with no foundation would spark an immediate mutiny. Instead, he offers a compromise. Join the next trip, find treasure, and earn the crew's respect the hard way. It's a logical test, and Li Fan accepts, knowing his cheat ability makes success inevitable. Back at the tower, the shopkeeper is stunned that Li Fan navigated the politics so effortlessly. Her subordinate wonders what kind of powerful backing allows a refugee to act with such confidence. She decides to double down, ordering a luxury property deed to be sent to Li Fan as a welcome gift. The subordinate sweats nervously, pointing out that the house cost a fortune and was meant for a bribe. He argues they should wait for results before handing over prime real estate to a stranger. But the shopkeeper insists, betting that a small investment now will yield massive returns later. Li Fan moves in immediately, trading the refugee slums for a private courtyard with a garden. He dismisses the harem of maids sent by the tower, preferring his secrets to remain secret. His peace is short-lived as the streets erupt in panic over an approaching windstorm. The sky darkens and the wind begins to tear the roofs off the surrounding buildings. Li Fan steps out to witness the fury of nature in a world governed by spiritual energy. A massive blue dome springs to life, shielding the city from the encroaching destruction. The Island Protection Grand Formation hums with power, sealing the residents inside a bubble of safety. The commoners kneel in worship, thanking the Immortal Master for not letting them die today. Li Fan observes the spectacle, impressed by the absolute defense of a true cultivation array. The barrier filters out the roar of the wind, leaving the city in an eerie, artificial silence. He muses on the disparity of power, where one man's spell can defy the wrath of nature, but his calm is shattered as a new, terrifying energy spikes above the dome. Purple lightning tears through the clouds, slamming into the barrier with the force of a nuke. The ground heaves, and Li Fan coughs up blood as the aftershock bypasses the shield. He struggles to stand, realizing this isn't a storm, it's a targeted bombardment. Bolt after bolt hammers the formation, threatening to crack the only thing keeping them alive. The sky becomes a vortex of destruction, focusing all its rage on the tiny island. Li Fan's face twists in frustration, realizing he has zero control over this situation. He wonders if his latest run is about to be cut short by a random act of God. The Island Protection Grand Formation proves its worth, holding firm against the celestial bombardment. The storm recedes as quickly as it arrived, leaving the ocean calm but the atmosphere heavy. Locals recall a far worse tempest 15 years ago that nearly shattered the island's defenses. As the skies clear, Li Fan observes the aftermath, noting that the island is already bouncing back. The manor distributes spirit talismans to every household, turning the populace into a massive diagnostic tool. The Immortal Master scans the hundreds of thousands of formation nodes, ensuring no cracks remain in their armor. Satisfied with the inspection, the Master departs to refuel his resources, leaving the mortals to their business. Thousands of talismans light up in unison, confirming that the island's spiritual foundation is intact. The commoners erupt in celebration, relieved that their magical bubble didn't pop this time. But the calm brings a new wave of refugees, fleeing islands that weren't as lucky as this one. Li Fan checks his status screen, pleased to see his mental capacity has expanded slightly after the ordeal. A month later, a messenger arrives with the summons Li Fan has been patiently waiting for. He arrives at the bustling pier, where the massive Kang Yuan ship awaits its next voyage. The messenger leads him to the crew, a rough bunch who look less than thrilled to see a stranger. The sailors are already on edge, grumbling about increased quotas caused by the destruction of a neighboring island. With Coral Island gone, the tax burden has shifted to them, threatening their very livelihoods. A muscular captain named Zhang Haobo steps in, scolding his men for their pathetic display of fear. He tries to rally them with the promise of a higher reward share, but morale is rock bottom. The crew isn't buying it, knowing their fishing skills are barely enough to survive, let alone profit. Zhang Haobo grins, revealing that management has sent a specialist to ensure their success. He points to Li Fan, and the crew stares in disbelief at the pale, scholarly man standing before them. They mock his clean robes and soft hands, doubting he's ever seen a day of hard labor in his life. Zhang Haobo barks at them to show respect, announcing that this man was personally appointed by Steward Zhao. The crew realizes their captain is being sidelined for this newcomer, and the atmosphere turns volatile. One loyal sailor steps forward, shouting that he refuses to sail under anyone but his old boss. Li Fan watches the mutiny brew with a faint, amused smirk, unimpressed by their loyalty. The mob mentality takes over, and someone suggests tossing the noble into the sea to feed the fish. Zhang Haobo physically blocks them, knowing that killing an appointee is a death sentence for them all. He reminds them of the harsh reality. The ship belongs to the manor, and they are just disposable labor. Li Fan finally speaks, challenging them to question the judgment of the man who owns their lives. The crew eyes the newcomer with skepticism, wondering if Steward Zhao's legendary eye for talent has finally failed him. Zhang Haobo grits his teeth, his pride stinging at the thought of a soft-handed scholar taking credit for his fleet's work. He slams his hand down, refusing to believe the rumors of Li Fan's luck and accusing him of using connections to steal the captain's glory. But hierarchy is absolute, so he swallows his rage and commands the crew to cast off into the open sea. The Kang Yuan glides forward without a breeze, powered by spirit stones and micro-formations rather than the fickle wind. A mystical spirit lure sits on the deck, ready to guide them toward the elusive liuli fish, provided they can actually find a trace of them. But the ocean is vast and the lure's range is pitifully short, leaving the crew to rely on their eyes and blind luck. 2 weeks pass in agonizing failure, with the nets coming up empty aside from common trash fish and useless rocks. Morale plummets as the hold remains empty, and Zhang Haobo begins to sweat over the looming punishment for returning last place. He stares at their pathetic haul, praying to the immortal master for a miracle before their month is up. Suddenly, the cabin door opens, and Li Fan finally decides to grace the deck with his presence after weeks of seclusion. Zhang mocks him, joking that he thought the scholar had died of seasickness in the dark. Li Fan ignores the jab and issues a bizarre command, demanding a small boat immediately because he saw treasure. The crew stares in disbelief, wondering if the isolation has finally snapped his mind or if he's just mocking them. Zhang demands to know if this is a joke, his patience wearing thin with the eccentric passenger who hasn't lifted a finger all trip. Li Fan insists with absolute conviction, claiming he spotted the glint of jewelry shining deep beneath the waves. He warns that the light of the treasure is fading, urging them to act before the opportunity vanishes into the deep. Desperate for any win, Zhang caves to the madness and orders his men to lower a skiff for the madman. Li Fan climbs in but forbids anyone from following, insisting on retrieving the bounty alone to protect his methods. He claims their noise disrupts his spiritual sense, a convenient excuse to hide the fact that he's just pulling items from his inventory. The crew watches him row away, fuming at the arrogance of a man who treats the deadly ocean like a private pond. As he becomes a speck on the horizon, the sailors wonder if he's just using this as an elaborate suicide attempt to escape the mission. 2 hours later, a red flare tears through the night sky, silencing the doubters instantly. The Kang Yuan rushes to the scene, finding Li Fan waiting calmly above a patch of dark water, claiming the treasure is right below. Zhang wastes no time screaming for the divers and nets to hit the water, praying this isn't a hallucination. The nets rise heavy and dripping, spilling open to reveal chest after chest of glittering gold and artifacts. Zhang stares, his jaw hitting the deck as he counts 16 crates of pure wealth, enough to buy the whole fleet. The crew realizes the scholar wasn't crazy. He's a golden goose who just saved their skins and made them rich. Zhang's skepticism shatters, replaced by the terrifying realization that Li Fan's eyes can pierce the deep where others see nothing. He compares Li Fan to the legendary Steward Zhao, realizing he is standing in the shadow of a true monster, disguised as a mortal.